Jack Smith spent years targeting Trump, but now the hunter becomes the hunted. Blaze News The Mandate starts right now. Welcome in, everyone. I'm Jill Savage, joined by editor-in-chief Matthew Peterson. He's not right here, though. We have to go all the way over there to the screen. I don't care if there's no humidity in Southern California. Matt, you're still going to have to do the show.
Yeah, I know. I still have to do the show, but that's fine. I love doing the show. And I'm here at a hotel with all the Claremont Institute Lincoln Fellows, and I've done a couple sessions already this weekend. Incredible group of people. And it's always heartening because, you meet people in and outside the administration who, these are all mid-career professionals who come together for 10 days to actually read the good stuff and think about, sort of principles from the founding, how we got here, and then what to do about it. And it's heartening for them, and it's heartening for everyone who's part of it, because you realize how far this movement has come and how, how in the middle of the fight we actually are. And that's a great thing.
Well, it might be heartening for some of the audience because some days, we don't always have good news to bring the people. But when it's like a Trump revenge tour day, Matt, then there is some good news. And we need to talk about it because we have special counsel Jack Smith and the Corporation of Public Broadcasting allocating tens of millions of dollars in taxpayer funds in an attempt to thwart Donald Trump's comeback. But now their efforts have faltered. President Trump is taking a victory lap against those who once sought to derail him. So, Matt, we get through sometimes to the other side. This is what we've been waiting for, is just a little moment of victory.
Yeah, and I think, a lot of little moments of victory, right, lead to ultimately winning the campaign. And it's extremely important to take the win. One thing the right doesn't like to do, being too used to losing for too long, is just take the W's. And yeah, NPR has been around forever. It's ridiculous. We should never have been funding this stuff for the last few decades at least. But we got rid of it. And some of these clowns who went after Trump are really going to be punished. You see the drums beating when it comes to Russiagate in a very serious way. I've never been so heartened. I mean, Stephen Miller's going out there and saying, look, there's no statute of limitations on this because the conspiracy is ongoing. It's still going on now in the media. Brennan and them are still doing it. They still haven't repented at all. They're still engaged in fighting Trump. So I just see, I hear a lot of people in and out of the administration or around it, right, who are complaining because they're complaining about what they're fighting, right? They're fighting this battle and that battle. But when you step out for a second, you just see a series of wins and a momentous 6 months and the groundwork for a momentous, another 3 years rounding out this term. And so I am full of hope for the future.
When you look at Jack Smith, we could look at like the greatest hits that he has gone through, because he's now under investigation for the possible Hatch Act, which is just going through and interfering or affecting the result of an election. Well, of course we know this, right? He went through, and we know the long list of things that he has done to Donald Trump in anticipation of the 2024 election. He was named 3 days after Donald Trump announced that he was running. We all lived through this. But then, of course, he goes through and resigns 10 days before Trump actually is inaugurated as president. In that short period of time, Matt, he was able to blow through $47 million in taxpayer funding. And for what, Matt, right? We go through and we see all of this, the political stuff that we just have such a hard time waiting around for justice to happen. At least now somebody's actually being investigated.
Yeah, it's serious, and that's heartening to see. And it's heartening to see because what Jack Smith and others did, I mean, this is worse, far worse than what being a prostitute, right? Or prostitution. It's far worse than, these thieving rings that are out there. I mean, this is a crime that goes to the heart of really with the country and what it is. Like, we can't have a democracy if we have the legal system being used and abused by these hacks. What they do is reprehensible because it's so dishonorable, right? It shows that they don't really care about the rule of law at all. And they will use it and abuse it and destroy our legal system in order to go after their political opponents. So the only proper response is to attack them and hold them accountable for their crimes. And this is what we see going on here. We need many such investigations. Because here's the other thing. Even if you just investigate someone, you put pressure on them, right? As everyone on the right knows, because it happened to them for the last, however many years. Really, there's more than 4 going back to the Obama administration. So you have to do exactly what they're doing, and you have to do that en masse, and it needs to be 100% war all the time on all fronts. And what will happen is you take a couple people down, everyone's afraid of the investigation, and then all of a sudden you start changing behavior. Because remember, that's why we have law. We have law so that we can't arrest every bad guy all the time, although we could try. But when you arrest enough bad guys, people stop doing that thing because they don't want to go to jail. It's as simple as that, something we've forgotten about in this country. So again, I'm full of hope for the future. There's a lot of work to be done, but this is a sign that there's a lot of serious people out there who know that Jill Savage is right, and it's perp walks, for Christmas or bust.
My threshold for arrests is much higher than I think even a lot of people in this audience are willing to even let on. The other nice story that we actually have today, I love it. It warms my heart, Matt, when we can cut some federal funding. It's a good day, and it's absolutely needed when it's the Corporation for Public Broadcasting. When we see this is absolutely necessary, because they were going through and promoting the drag queen story hours that we all remember, all the climate hysteria, all the woke ideology. It all funneled right there through all of the corporate public broadcasting.
Yeah. So this was, what was the Corporation for Public Broadcasting doing? Well, it was taking our tax money and using it to propel the Democratic Party forward. So this is absolutely also reprehensible. It should never have been allowed. The fact that it took this long to get rid of it is ridiculous, but that's not a knock on Trump. Trump's the one who actually did it. It's a knock on all the Republicans before him. We lived in a world in which the Corporation for Public Broadcasting was taking our money and supporting the Democratic Party and one side of the political equation. I mean, that's what was going on, full stop. This was domestic propaganda paid for by you and I against things that at least half the country, if not more, doesn't stand for. So there's like hating on one side or even a majority and pushing this ideology. Thank God that's over. It's not a lot of money, of course, in the grand scheme of things, but it's a very important dollop of money, and it's an important symbolic act to the entire country that we're not going to put up with this kind of thing anymore. We're moving in a new direction, and it's truly a new era when finally, after all these decades, it's no more. Bye-bye. Not paying for it.
I want to go through and just tie everything together, right? You're out there with the Claremont Institute trying to get the country back to its original founding. And we see stories like this, right? Where we're like, okay, we can go through and actually defund programs that don't need any more of this of this federal money. How many more steps could we actually take, right? Theoretically, right now, looking at the Trump administration within the next year before we hit the midterms again, how much more is realistically possible?
Jill, I think a lot more is not only possible, but in the works. So the kinds of discussions and debates that we have and have had at the fellowships for a long time has created this coterie of leaders throughout the administration who some of them younger, some of them mid-career, some of them in charge of, some pretty big stuff. But what unites them all is trying to figure out what realistically can be done, right? Because it's easy when you're at home, like we need to cut everything, we need to have the perp walks, right, do all this stuff. But then someone's got to actually figure out how to do that when you take over the government. And again, when you take over a government agency, it's like you took over a pirate ship and it's just you and your friends in the captain's quarters, and everyone else on the ship hates you and you're stuck with them, and you got to try to drive the ship to the right place, and it's not where they want to go. In order to do that, you need to know how the ship works, or you need to have people who know every inch of how that machine operates. So this is what you have to do in government with the bureaucracy. You have to know how the system works in order to reform it, and in order to figure out the best way forward. So, the short answer to your question is, it has to unfold in stages. You can't do everything all at once. But the good news about this administration is there's a lot of people who've been thinking about this for a long time, since Donald Trump, has been out of power, and you have many stages to come. We're just in the beginning part of it. So when it comes to spending cuts, there's going to be Supreme Court cases as OMB pushes with citizens and impoundment. After the fact with discretionary spending, there's a lot of that can be cut. Now, is that all the welfare money and the big item stuff? No, but it's a chunk of change, and it's pushing forward and giving people the confidence and the courage that we can actually cut things and the sky doesn't fall down. And that's really important, because ultimately you are playing a political game, because you're trying to pressure Congress to start doing the right thing more and more. And just like when you start, a new habit, right? You got to start with baby steps. And people in Congress are like that. We have to push them, push them, push them. The administration will also push the courts in the same way. And pretty soon those steps start to add up. And then all of a sudden you're knocking on the door of a big obstacle, and now you have the momentum to get rid of it. And I think that's happening all over the administration.
Chris Bedford is on vacation all week. Maybe he's on a pirate ship. I don't know. He could be. Don't worry. We're going to have some great stuff coming up for you on the show today. We're going to get into Greg Abbott and the fight against all of the Texas Democrats coming up next. I used to think that I knew what I was actually buying at the grocery store, but then you find out something like 4 billion pounds of meat were imported to the United States, and that was just last year. But a lot of it can still be labeled like it's right here from America. That's when you have to start thinking, like, what are we actually eating? If all these labels can actually say product of the USA when the meat wasn't raised here, then what other games can they even be playing with all these labels? That's why you need to look at Good Ranchers, because they've changed everything. We know that their meat is 100% American. It's born, raised, and harvested right here on local family farms, and it's delivered right to your door. I'm a subscriber myself, so let me tell you, it's so good. You can get $40 off every box, free shipping, and a free gift in every order for life. I've gotten all the bacon, the seed oil-free chicken nuggets, the Wagyu burgers. You can swap through each gift every month and try something new. So if you're worried about signing up for a subscription, you shouldn't be, because you can pause, delay, or cancel at any time. There's no stress or lock-in. It's all really flexible. Thousands of people have already made the switch, and the reviews are amazing. So go head over to goodranchers.com and see what everybody's talking about. If you use my code Jill, you'll get $40 off plus free meat for life with your subscription. It's goodranchers.com. Welcome to the table. Texas was on track to change its congressional map until state Democrats decided to take an unexpected vacation. While some Republicans see this as a distraction, our next guest may have a warning from once red California. It turns out you can mess with Texas. When faced with fight or flight, Texas Democrats will always choose flight. And this time, that flight was on a $47 million private jet to Chicago. So here's Texas State Rep Gene Wu's excuse for skipping work.
The tool they're using is a racist, gerrymandered map. A map that seeks to use racial lines to divide hard-working communities. And Governor Abbott is doing this in submission to Donald Trump, so that Donald Trump could steal these communities' power and voice.
It always has to be racist, doesn't it? Here with more is Tom Sauer. He's the CEO and founder of the MacArthur Group. So, Tom, when we look at this, you're from California, right? You live there. You have Gavin Newsom, and he's going out there saying this is what fighting for democracy looks like. So what do you call it?
I think it's more about whenever they say, by the way, thanks for having me back again, you guys. I think when they say fighting for our democracy, what they're really talking about is fighting for their hegemony. Right, fighting for their dominance over politics, especially in a place like California. Here's a for instance, right? Is right now we've got some folks who decide they're going to run to be the Republican governor, right? And the thing is this is a critique I'll have of Republicans. Is we focus way too hard on the really big seats, like being the next governor of California. And honestly, it's going to be at best an uphill battle. But at the same time, even if you win, you've got a supermajority, Democrat supermajority in both houses of the legislature. So in my mind, it's like we really could focus on all of these seats where there are too many Republicans in California who think about the governor's office and think about the White House, but they want to talk about their own state politics. They don't even know who their California state assembly representative is or their state senator is. And when you've got that supermajority, that's one thing that I think, at least in California, I don't live in Texas, but in California, I think that's something we really need to focus on. I think that's something that's really important.
We should say it's a good thing, right? That Texas has a good problem right now with these clowns running away, because they actually are taking action to take back the legislature. But as you know, in all of these large states, this is an incredible problem. And even in red Texas, right, it's a problem that needs to be solved. So, if this is a problem in Texas where they're just doing what they should have done a long time ago, when you look at California and what MAGA should do in these states, California and New York, it's such a tall order. Like, how do you go after the legislature? Or maybe a better place to start is, what aren't Republicans in these states doing that they should be doing?
I think a great answer to that is that, again, it's a cliche, but it's true that all politics is local. So, for instance, we had in the previous cycle, we had folks who were didn't want to talk about crime running for congressional office. And I think I talked with you guys last time I was here. And the thing is, even though you might say, well, if you're running for a congressional seat, we shouldn't worry about crime or anything like that. But it's a local issue. It's what people actually care about. And also, I look at things like the legislature when it's all local politics. For instance, in Newport Beach, where I live, is the entire city council, all 9 of them, endorsed by the Orange County Republican Party. They all own either significant property or significant businesses, and they're all endorsed by the Orange County Republican Party. And the oldest person's like 50. So, that says a lot, but at that local level. But sometimes when it comes to the federal game, or even at the state legislature game, we really have our eye off the ball. We think about the really big target. For example, back even when Arnold Schwarzenegger was the governor, right? He could hardly do anything. He accomplished very little because, again, he had a Democrat supermajority. So, my advice, and I've said this to folks who are in the know, so to speak, and have a little bit of influence and power, at least in Orange County, is focus on those seats. Focus where it really wins there. And then that way, and for instance, there are even a number of so-called Democrats who are in the California legislature who aren't really that liberal. They just they've told me, like, I can't get elected if I have an R to dog catcher, if I have an R next to my name. So it's just, that is one of the issues that I really see here. But I'll say in a lot of places in California, especially in Orange County, there's a vibrant donor base. There's a lot of folks out there who want to be led. They have deep pockets. And I think with the right leadership and the right strategy, right, I think we could see a lot of real success.
Tom, on this show, we always want to see all of the arrest warrants go out. We want to see the perp walks. We want to see Republicans actually put some oomph behind what they actually could go out there and do. And the Texas House was apparently listening this afternoon. Let's take a look.
The motion prevails. The sergeant-at-arms and any officers appointed by her are directed to send for all absentees whose attendance is not excused for the purposes of securing and maintaining their attendance under warrant of arrest if necessary until further order of the House.
So they were threatening the arrest warrants to go out, and now we see that they did that today, Tom.
That is something that I could not imagine Republicans in California, as much as I would love it if they would, getting serious. Because as you know, sometimes there are too many Republicans, and I'd say especially in California, that are there. I feel that they're more concerned with being liked and being approved of. And I think there's almost a sense of learned helplessness, right? Where they define their politics as resisting the left or slowing it down. We have to stop Gavin Newsom. We have to stop this. But instead, it's like they don't really have a very proactive, aggressive approach. And the thing is like, really, when it comes down to so many fundamental issues, public safety, cleanliness, having vagrants off the street, right? Like lowering their taxes, a lot of times they're not really all that ready to get serious. And I still think that, hey, when we focus at the local level, and in some places it works really well. If you come to Newport Beach, California, it is a beautiful, beautiful place. It is, I will admit, obscenely expensive, but it is safe. It is clean. It's somewhere you'd want to raise your kids if you can afford to, unfortunately. So I think there's a real opportunity here in California. And I hope that there are California Republicans who are, in power or within the party that are taking notes here.
Tom, Governor Newsom says he might step in and overrule the California Redistricting Commission just to counter these Republican wins in Texas. I mean, these guys are playing a national game right now with a lot of importance for the nation. Do you think that the Republicans in California have any chance of stopping him if he was to do that?
I think they would like to, and I think they'd probably hem and haw about it, but I would be very, very surprised, very pleasantly surprised if they did. One thing as well, I mean, you and I have spoken about this before, Matt, that the side that wants to play by the rules will always lose to the side that wants to win.
I want to go.
And sometimes I feel that there are not enough California Republicans who are ready to really play hardball.
Yeah, and that's where I want to go with this as well, because when you talk about playing hardball, the things that we actually need to look out for in this country right now is the military and making sure that everything is effective and ready just in case something was going to come down. So now looking out, we had 4 years of Joe Biden that we had to deal with, and now we are out on the other side. So how do we go through and actually rebuild after the Joe Biden Sleepy Joe 4 years that we all had to go through and deal with?
I'm so glad you asked that question. For those who might not know, I spent most of my adult life in the military. I'm a Naval Academy graduate. I was a Navy EOD special operations officer for most of my life. My little brother is currently deployed overseas, active doing the same thing I did. All of my closest friends are either about to retire, are retired, or they're now senior officers. And one thing that we all agree on is that a lot of the rhetoric coming out, the positive, good rhetoric coming from Secretary Hegseth and DOD in general, is about getting the woke and the DEI out of the military. And I can tell you that even my friends who aren't very conservative are in violent agreement with that. And that is great. However, the real problems in the military, the real ones, they're not sexy, they don't make good headlines, and they're very, very difficult. Fixing the defense acquisitions process. I mean, it's just the basics of DoD acquisitions is a giant eye chart. The amount of bloat and red tape, and it is an incredibly complicated process. Our readiness issues, a lot of the stuff I'm not telling any secrets. But a lot of our readiness, are our ships ready to deploy and go to combat? Just because it might be sitting on the waterfront doesn't mean they're ready for a fight. Especially where I spent most of my time in the military was in the Western Pacific, Japan, Philippines, Guam, Korea. One thing I knew out there, they always talk about being able to fight tonight, as in if we got into a fight with China, or we got into a fight with North Korea, that we'd be ready to go right away. And it's no secret that we're not quite as ready as we think we would be, as we think we should be, and getting that readiness up there right away. And especially this is my opinion here, is getting the hell out of the Middle East, not getting involved in anything in Europe, and pivoting towards the Pacific, because that is the one true problem. That's something that Elbridge Colby, the Undersecretary of Defense for Policy, who I'm a huge fan of, says, no, the problem needs to be China, China, China in the Pacific. They are our longest standing rival, and they're going to be our enduring problem for the next century. And if we're not really addressing that problem, and also when they say that if we're not addressing that problem, we're in deep trouble. But furthermore, critics might say, well, we can walk and chew gum at the same time. We can do two big things at the same time. We have proven that we can't. We need to be able to fight in one area, and that takes precedence over anything else.
Tough stuff. I love what you say about, just there's some basic stuff that people are glossing over. The woke stuff is bad, but actually just making things work is also a problem. One aspect of this that we should have you on again and talk about more, but I want to at least ask you now, is when it comes to the VA and veterans. This is something that a lot of our audience is concerned with.
Yes.
We've been concerned with it at this network. I have stories from relatives in my family, a brother, going through some things, and I just am astounded that we're still talking about this as a problem in the year of our Lord 2025, when we've known it's a problem for a long time. So I know you know a lot about this and have worked in this area for a while. What do you think needs to be done by the administration now?
It's a really simple problem, and I think there's a very simple answer. And I will admit that I am somewhat frustrated that it hasn't happened yet. I know we are taking steps. I know we're getting there. We only recently had our Undersecretary of Health for the VA just recently confirmed by the Senate. But here's the issue. When you think about VA care, you don't necessarily think about their optometry program or their dermatology program. What you think about is their mental health, suicide prevention, and addiction treatment, because those are the biggest and deadliest problems that face America's veterans after 20 plus years of war. I can tell you right now, I've lost many more friends to addiction and suicide than I have to ISIS, Al-Qaeda, and the Taliban combined. No doubt, right? And I can say that right now, today, unfortunately, as a holdover from the Biden administration that is yet to be fully resolved under President Trump and Secretary Doug Collins, is that today, a veteran within the Veteran Healthcare Administration who is a VA patient, right? He or she has less access to intensive mental health and addiction treatment than any civilian, so to speak, off the streets who has a bare bones insurance policy that meets the Obamacare requirements, right? So in other words, if you were somebody who was not a veteran and you were just a normal civilian person, but you had a basic insurance policy and you were in a mental health or an addiction crisis, you could literally find an inpatient treatment center. You could knock on their door, don't even call them ahead of time, and say, hey, I need help. Can you please treat me? They'd verify your benefits and they'd admit you. Veterans today in the VA healthcare system do not have that level of access. They are frequently put on waiting lists or deferred community care all the time. And now that is contrary to what the people on the Hill want to put out and contrary to what Secretary Collins' guidance is. But however, I can tell you, we've had it in writing from more than one VA hospital, at least in California, if not nationwide, that openly defies that. And there are stacks and stacks of dead veterans that can prove it. So I would say to the administration, to Secretary Collins, if you're listening, is if you immediately change that requirement so that if a veteran in a mental health or addiction crisis needs treatment immediately, that they should immediately be seen. If you change that right now, you would save dozens of veterans' lives within days, and you would save hundreds of veterans' lives within weeks and months. I think that's one thing that is a no-brainer to anybody, and it doesn't require an act of Congress. You can use that to codify it, but the VA under Secretary Collins through President Trump has the ability to do that this afternoon.
That is so well said, Tom. I am so glad that you actually come out here and just speak the truth so plainly, because it's something that more people need to be talking about. We'll definitely have you back on the show, but I do know that you're in a hotel, Matt's in a hotel. Matt, you're there for the same reason. Go ahead and tell everybody what Tom's doing.
Oh yeah, well, Tom is one of the proud 2025 Lincoln Fellowship fellows at the Claremont Institute, and we're having a great time here. You know, Tom's been on the show before, obviously, and he's in the middle of the Lincoln Fellowship program where they give him a fat stack of stuff to read and seminars all day. It's a pretty serious operation, but at the same time, we do have fun in the hospitality suite at night.
We do. It's great. I am enjoying it so much, and I'm incredibly grateful to Claremont and you and Ryan Williams, everyone else, to allow me to be a part of it. It's a very humbling and honoring. So thank you to you and to all of Claremont.
The books are coming in handy. They're helping prop up the computer right now so that it's there. We know he has the books. He's reading them. The work is getting done. Tom, thanks so much for coming on. We'll see you again soon.
Thank you so much.
The Cool Kids Club will continue right after this. We'll have more from the Claremont Institute with the 2025 Lincoln Fellows next. Well, if you watch the show, you know we're big fans of the Oversight Project. So when a public university rejected their request to see a syllabus, we knew we had to figure out what was inside. So here with more is Kyle Brosnan. He's the vice president of legal at the Oversight Project. So Kyle, thanks for joining us. We'll get to some fun Mike Howell stories maybe if we have time later. But tell us a little bit about a certain DEI-obsessed faculty member that is at UNC Chapel Hill.
Yes, thanks for having me on. So we sent a FOIA request to UNC Chapel Hill, which is a public university, and we did the unthinkable. We asked for the syllabus of a number of professors, focusing basically on whether or not they were still teaching DEI and other garbage like that in defiance of President Trump's executive order. And one of the professors that got one of our requests went on LinkedIn and threw what can only be described as a hissy fit, saying that we were threatening academic integrity and how he felt attacked and yada, yada, yada. Well, we got the syllabus, and guess what? It's full of DEI garbage. It contains classes and lectures on why diversity programs fail, and about white guilt and things like that. And so we've got other requests out there to other public universities, and we look forward to those universities complying with the law, and we're going to continue to expose DEI and other corrosive ideologies in academia, particularly at public universities.
Now, Kyle, I personally find this story flipping hilarious. I do want to drill into the details, just because it's one of those things. I mean, I taught at universities. The syllabus is not a top secret document. This is something that, in fact, you want to share to the world. And if you're teaching, you're like, why does no one read this? I wish more people would. I want to airdrop it all over campus, right, to students. So how do they even make this argument? What's the argument here?
So the professor and a bunch of his buddies on the left chimed in to back him up. They claim it's intellectual property, which if you even think about it for a second, that's crazy. I mean, particularly at these public universities, they're funded by taxpayers. Especially if you're paying student loans, it's federal student loans money. That it's all run by the government. And so, and you're right though, Matt. You as a professor are trusted to endow your knowledge upon your students and show off your research that you do. You should be shouting that from the rooftops. You should be wanting students to see your syllabus. But the fact that they're putting barriers up and actually pretending to be the victim of a transparency organization is just crazy.
This assistant professor, Petsko, is the one that we're talking about here. He went on to LinkedIn and post this. It's so funny. He said, keep doing the work you were trained to do. Keep educating others. Keep sharing your experiences. And don't let vague references to executive orders make you question whether you have a right to be sharing your knowledge with the world. That's how they're going about justifying keeping all of this DEI nonsense in there. And it's happening at my alma mater too. This is happening at the University of Iowa right now. There are stories right now in the news about this. So how widespread is this? How many times are we going to have to hear, oh, just keep sharing your information with the world and such?
I mean, I wish academia was still a venue where people share knowledge. It's become an indoctrination center. And that's why I think President Trump has issued the executive order going after DEI, and why his administration has really put efforts to hamp down DEI in education. I mean, the university system have been completely taken over by the left and their corrosive ideology, where they teach, young impressionable minds to hate America. And so when education has become an indoctrination factory instead of one where the pursuit of knowledge is encouraged and flourishes, it's fair game for oversight, and that's what we're doing.
Yeah, and it really is rich. I mean, share your knowledge, but not your syllabus, because we don't want anyone to know we're teaching at a public university. It's absolutely ridiculous. They should post all of this publicly all the time. Everyone should know exactly what the hell is there. And if I would just say to the audience, if you're sending a kid or you're thinking about going to college and you don't know exactly what's being taught in the courses, you shouldn't be going there. You should be looking at exactly the courses you're going to take and exactly what you're going to read, because that's what you're paying for at the end of the day. But I could get on my professor soapbox for a while, and we don't want to do that. We have one of the biggest stories in America, a story that is not being fully told, still ongoing, something that oversight is at the heart of, has really been pushing on, and that is the autopen story. Now, what is the latest on that for you guys, Kyle?
Yeah, so we'll be publishing something later this week. We pulled presidential proclamations issued during the Biden administration. It's taken a little while to get every one he issued in there. There's several hundred of them. And lo and behold, we found more widespread and prolific use of the autopen. We found at least a third and a fourth different signature that the Biden White House deployed to affix his signature to these proclamations. And they're important because there are some statutes, particularly the Antiquities Act, which allows only the president to issue national monuments and declare national monuments that foreclose commerce and other companies from doing business on that land there. So and so if President Biden is auto-penning, again, a proclamation that only he can issue, we get into all the same problems that we see with the pardons of whether or not somebody other than the president was exercising a non-delegable presidential power.
Well, voters obviously need to know who was actually controlling the auto pen. So we've been going through this story for a few months now. You guys have been digging into this. So what are some of the next steps, at least from a whole legislative standpoint? Because I know they keep pulling people out in front of House investigators.
Yeah, some of them have showed up and pled the fifth. Particularly, President Biden's doctor pled the fifth and claimed doctor-patient privilege, which doesn't apply to Congress. And so the House can immunize him and force him to testify, at least take away the Fifth Amendment issues. He is a retired colonel in the Army, I believe, so there is a potential that he could be court-martialed if he were to be called into active duty here. Chairman Comer was making the media rounds a couple days ago saying that the folks that did show up and talk are giving contradictory statements. Wow, that's really surprising. He also hinted that Vice President Harris might be getting a subpoena from House investigators here. But I really think that what's going to happen with the auto pen investigation is that the paper is going to tell the story. They need to submit written records to look at the paper trail of the authorization for each individual pardon. President Biden spoke to the New York Times a couple of weeks ago here, and it was telling in that interview in that he said he approved broad categories of people to receive pardons, but the staff would sort of work out the particulars as to which person got pardoned in a given batch here. Then that might not be legal, and that is a serious. It raises serious questions as to who indeed was exercising powers that only belong to the president. And so, if I were back on the Hill doing investigations as I did earlier in my career, those are the ones I'd be focusing on here because those are the ones that are most legally questionable.
Kyle, former Biden ambassador Mike Donnellan was just testified before was brought before the House investigators. That's a name that's deep in the Biden brain trust, but not a lot of people know. Is that significant at all? The fact that he was brought in there and had to answer some questions.
Yeah, I mean, Biden kept a very close inner circle during his long career in Washington. So he's got a series of consiglières, as we like to call them. Mike Donnellan, Steve Ricchetti, chief among them. And that one thing that you see is that his White House was kind of run a little bit differently than most do, to where your title may not necessarily correspond with the access and the power you had. Anthony Bernal, another name who I believe pled the fifth before Comer. He was the First Lady's chief of staff or communications director or something like that. And so, and Neera Tanden, who was the staff secretary, testified that when she became staff secretary, her access to the president went down. If anyone watches President Trump on TV signing executive orders, that bald guy that stands next to him and kind of reads him what he's signing, his name is Will Sharf. He's the staff secretary. He is next to the president every single day, getting him important documents to sign. Compare that to Neera Tanden, who said that she only saw him once every 6 weeks and then would get a signed decision memo authorizing certain actions there. She never saw him sign them. She doesn't know if he signed them, but it doesn't make sense from a staff secretary perspective, the lack of access that she had there. And so I think what we're learning from these interviews from people who are talking is that the Biden White House was run in a very atypical fashion. And it just sort of throws more fuel onto the fire as to who was running the country for the last 4 years.
Well, Kyle, you've made it out of the swamp, at least for a few days. He's also another 2025 Claremont Institute Lincoln Fellow. So if you have any advice for young minds out there that want to, enter the swamp, but actually want to do so in like a reasonable fashion to have some good values and some real impact, how could the Lincoln Fellowship help them with what you're going through right now?
Yeah, we've been focusing a lot on the founding, and Matt in particular gave a series of good lectures on General Washington here. And I think I just speaking with my fellows, you could get a little bit depressed at the state of the country and how we've abandoned sort of the principles of our founding and what makes the American Republic great and the greatest country on earth. And so go back to our roots, I guess, is my message. But I'm certainly pessimistic, and a lot of our discussions talk about how we have gone away from the core founding. But I'm also optimistic because we have a really good group here this year. A lot of folks with a wide divergence of backgrounds and sort of experiences and where they are in their careers here. I'm the only lawyer in the crew, so I feel like people drag on lawyers all the time, as they should, but I have to stand up for the legal profession a little bit. But I'm also optimistic by the way that we could take our country back, and the leaders in the room here with me this summer. I think there's certainly cause for optimism.
Well, we're not done yet. We're still in the middle of it here. It really just started, right? Just began, and it's going to be an interesting week. There's going to be a lot of more special guests, coming through to talk about Golden Age agenda and all that, and the future. But Kyle and I, we still haven't had the beer, and he hasn't spilled the beans on Mike Howell. So Mike Howell is safe for now, but you're not going to be safe forever, right?
I'm looking forward to having that beer, Matt.
I got your lawyer here. We have your lawyer here.
It's perfect.
We're going to apply him with alcohol.
That's absolutely going to happen. You're going to come back. You're going to tell me all the stories. Kyle at It's Your Gov. Thanks so much for joining us here.
Thanks so much for having me. Take care.
Don't go anywhere. We'll be back with some of your replies in Sydney Sweeney right after this.
Sydney Sweeney, she's like a very hot actress right now.
She's a registered Republican?
Yes.
Oh, now I love her ad. Is that right? Is Sydney Sweeney? You'd be surprised at how many people are Republicans. That's what I wouldn't have known, but I'm glad you told me that. If Sydney Sweeney is a registered Republican, I think her ad is fantastic.
Matt, what kind of timeline are we living in right now that we have the president of the free world talking about Sydney Sweeney and like a jeans commercial?
I love this timeline. I love what's happening, and it's a real cultural shift. Like you can't manufacture this kind of thing. This is the kind of thing that's absolutely real, and it's the sniffing around is why the left decided they hated her. And just to see Trump in real time say that is, classic Trump. Then I love that. It's almost like you want to say, I'm not surprised, but he'll leap onto it. And what he's caused is real. There's a chain reaction going on in this culture where a lot of the insanity of the last decade is on the run.
Yeah, so it turns out that Sydney Sweeney doesn't just have good genes. She has common sense. So I posted on X that Sydney Sweeney is a registered Republican, as you just heard there. So what other celebrities do you think are closeted Republicans? Let's go ahead with Edward, who starts us off. I think Adam Sandler is secretly a Republican, he says, and more so after watching this interview with Rob Schneider. So he links to the interview if you care to go watch it. It's over there on X. But, Adam Sandler, I could totally see that one, MP.
Yeah, I mean, at the very least, he's not woke, and I think that there's a lot of people like that. And, it's true that a lot of times if you don't know in LA, you can kind of assume like they must be harboring some kind of dissenting views they don't want you to know about, because otherwise they're jumping up and down for their masters saying, look at me, look at how woke I am, give me a job.
Yes, and Naomi will round this out. She says, Carrie Underwood, I just know when she was singing at the inauguration. Yeah, I mean, Carrie Underwood, her husband, Mike Fisher, they're supposed to be pretty based out there. They have a nice little place in Tennessee outside of Nashville. She always goes through and posts like all like the apples that she's been picking and like the gardening stuff that she's doing. So I feel, MP, like that is very much in line with all the Republicans out there in Tennessee that have moved out there, especially from the state that you're in right now, from California.
Yeah, many such cases, people moving out there. And a lot of the Republicans, in these states, a lot of people moving are Republican from California. California has a ton of them, but a lot of them have left. But I would say with Carrie Underwood, I mean, yeah, you perform at the inauguration of Trump, the sequel. This time it's personal. You know where she stands.
Yeah, we have others like Mel Gibson and Kelsey Grammer, Dean Cain, who Steve Deace got to interview while he was at the White House. It made his life, I think, Matt, when he got to go through and he was like, Superman is a Republican. Obviously, Superman would be a Republican, right? Like if we're going all these heroes, all these, you're not going to have Superman be a Democrat.
No, and this is the case all over Hollywood. There's a number of people who've been quiet for many years, or people who have been muted. They've just been quieter than others. But I think you're going to see that start to end, and that's what's interesting about the Sydney Sweeney episode. You will see a resurgence, and remember, there's actual precedents for this. We were saying the other night, a great group of people, and someone made the brilliant point that, whatever you think about Ronald Reagan, you cannot take away the fact that ending the Cold War and everything he did created a cultural shift. Like all those 80s movies, right? Stallone, as that evolved, and Schwarzenegger and all of that, that is all a product of a real cultural shift that happened in the 1980s that is similar to what we're seeing now. But I think what we're seeing now is going to be even bigger, and it's going to be Trumpian. It's going to be much bigger than what we saw in the 1980s, because these people who are out there now, these figures like, oh, there's some celebrities who are actually on the right and conservative. Look, there's a lot of people in that world who we're not going to say anything because they don't want their careers damaged. But now you're going to have people become popular because they just boldly say what they think. And to his credit, like Pratt, right? I mean, he's an A-lister with multiple franchises, and he's obviously signaled where he stands, and that's been good. But you're going to see more of it, which is just freedom, right? That an actor can choose who they vote for, and it's okay either way.
It's weird. It's a weird concept that, wait, there are two parties, and you can choose the other one that might not just be the one that you have to have there if you're in Los Angeles. But you know what? Maybe with you and the Lincoln Fellows that are out there for the Claremont Institute, maybe you can turn on Top Gun Maverick. That's one of the best movies that is definitely not woke, that made Hollywood go, wait a minute, hold on. You're telling me these people actually want something that makes them feel good and patriotic.
Oh no, mentioning Tom Cruise is important here, because that movie was like the last movie, right? You didn't even think it could be made, but yet he did it, and they stayed out of him and Bruckheimer, who's also not a complete lib. These guys purposely kept the woke out of that. So really, really important stuff. But what's most, and this happened because of events like this, because we're bringing people together who are serious, who are actually going to do the work. They're going to read the words. They're going to think about things. They're going to argue about things. And at the end of the day, they're going to figure out how to implement what actually needs to be done. And that is the kind of thing that led us to this situation. And I think more and more people are going to be doing that. They're going to be doing it in media. They're going to be doing it in entertainment as well.
That is what we need to keep pushing forward. Don't get woke while you're out there in California, Matt. I know you won't. Thanks for watching, everybody. We'll see you back here tomorrow.